Hello. Before we dive right in, please subscribe to our channel, like, share and drop your comments. Thank you. Amaka Nwosu's heart thundered in her chest as she stood on the wide marble terrace of the Oriental Hotel, Lagos. Early morning light sparkled on the sweeping curves of Victoria Island's skyline. Flower girls sprinkled rose petals in her path, guests in vibrant asoebi lined both sides. Yet she felt as though she floated above it all, weightless and terrified. "Amaka, darling, you'll spill your makeup," her maid of honor, Kimi, whispered, patting at the crease in her lace gown. The dress was exquisite, ivory silk, hand-embroidered pearls, but Amaka barely registered its beauty. Her gaze tracked a single dandelion seed drifting on a stray breeze, as if searching for direction. "Just breathe," her father, Chief Nwosu, murmured as he clasped her elbow, forcing a steady pace. He was the picture of pride, perfectly tailored agbada, polished shoes, every inch the distinguished patriarch. "This union cements our family's legacy. You know what's at stake." At the far end of the aisle stood Tunde Balagan, his crisp white kaftan trimmed in gold. He offered a confident smile, one hand extended. In the crowd, he winked at Amaka as though they shared a private joke. But she no longer recognized him. His smile felt practiced, his gaze cool and businesslike. The organ began. Soft chords filled the terrace, guests hushed. Amaka closed her eyes, reciting a silent prayer for courage. She had arrived at this moment believing in duty, but somewhere along the way the tiny ember of her own desire had flickered out. "Here comes the bride," intoned the usher over the microphone. Amaka opened her eyes. Flashbulbs popped, paparazzi had breached the barricade, capturing every step. Her dress swept past orchid blossoms. The aisle seemed to stretch on forever. She reached Tunde, took his hand. He pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "You look stunning," he said. His voice, warm, low, sent a tremor through her. Was it affection, or just obligation? They exchanged vows. "I, Amaka, take you, Tunde, to be my lawful wedded husband." Her voice sounded distant, like someone else's. When she spoke his name, her lips felt numb. At the "You may kiss the bride," Tunde raised her veil and brushed his lips against hers. The crowd burst into applause. Amaka wilted inside. The kiss held no spark. As the choir's final hymn faded, her father clasped her shoulder. "You did well," he whispered, pride and relief mingling. But Amaka's stomach churned. She forced a smile for the cameras, smiled for her family, for tradition, for every expectation she'd ever carried. Behind her smile, a question burned: is this truly my life? Later that afternoon, as the wedding banquet hummed with life, champagne flowing, band playing high-life remixes, Amaka slipped away. She found refuge in the hotel's sunlit library, shelves of leather-bound books lining rich mahogany walls. A single chaise by the window beckoned. She sank into its cushions, lifting her lace train to sit comfortably. Outside, Lagos's bustle receded, honking cars, hawkers' cries vanished into silence. She drew a trembling breath and let memory fill the quiet. 2 years ago, Cheke Ease was waiting outside Terra Culture, clutching a battered sketchbook. His dark eyes, bright with hope, lingered on Amaka as she emerged. He'd chased his dream of being a painter all the way from Enugu, living off meager commissions. Yet when he saw her, he smiled like no hardship could dim him. "You missed my exhibit," he teased, tugging her toward his latest piece, a portrait of a girl perched on a rooftop, Lagos at dusk. But Mother Nature insisted on a personal preview. Amaka laughed, light, effortless. They'd spent that evening on the rooftop, wind in their hair, sipping malt and barbecued meat from nearby stands. He spoke of color theory and capture of light. She shared secret poems she'd hide in her diary. In that moment, she felt alive. Then her father had called, urgent. Money troubles in the bank. A political fallout. Orders to end the dalliance, to prepare for her union with Tunde, a strategic match. Amaka had folded under pressure. She'd left Chika a note, cold, formal, and boarded a Lagos express train home, heart in pieces. Now, seated in the library, Amaka pressed trembling fingers to her lips, tasting regret. She retrieved her phone and scrolled through old messages. Chika's playful emojis turned to unanswered pleas, then silence. Her chest tightened, guilt and longing warred inside. A sudden light cough startled her. She looked up. A woman stood nearby, draped in flowing indigo robes, a stranger but not quite. The woman's eyes, sharp and kind, studied Amaka. "Ereti Augun," she said softly, tipping her head. "I knew your mother. She was spirited, like you." Amaka sat up, startled. I don't know you. Ereti smiled faintly. My grandmother spoke of her. She said, one day, my daughter will face the same choice I did, between duty and destiny. And she left a message for that day. She placed an envelope on the table. Open it tonight, before you wed. Ereti's gaze pierced Amaka's core. You cannot ignore this. Before Amaka could reply, the woman turned and drifted away as silently as she'd come, disappearing behind the shelves. Amaka sat frozen, the envelope trembling in her hand. She flipped it open. Inside, a note in elegant handwriting. Child, I once tried to flee my fate. I was nearly free, until fear and duty reclaimed me. Should you choose otherwise, remember, it may cost everything, but at least you'll live true to yourself. Your mother. Her breath caught. A chill ran down her spine. As distant drums from the wedding reception pulsed through the walls, Amaka pressed the letter to her heart. The world outside was spinning in celebration. Inside her, a new resolve began to stir. Later that afternoon, as the wedding banquet hummed with life, champagne flowing, band playing high-life remixes, Amaka slipped away. She found refuge in the hotel's sunlit library, shelves of leather-bound books lining rich mahogany walls. A single chaise by the window beckoned. She sank into its cushions, lifting her lace train to sit comfortably. Outside, Lagos's bustle receded, honking cars, hawkers' cries vanished into silence. She drew a trembling breath and let memory fill the quiet. 2 years ago, Checker Ease was waiting outside Terra Culture, clutching a battered sketchbook. His dark eyes, bright with hope, lingered on Amaka as she emerged. He chased his dream of being a painter all the way from Enugu, living off meager commissions. Yet when he saw her, he smiled like no hardship could dim him. You missed my exhibit, he teased, tugging her toward his latest piece, a portrait of a girl perched on a rooftop, Lagos at dusk. But Mother Nature insisted on a personal preview. Amaka laughed, light, effortless. They'd spent that evening on the rooftop, wind in their hair, sipping malt and barbecued meat from nearby stands. He spoke of color theory and capture of light. She shared secret poems she'd hide in her diary. In that moment, she felt alive. Then her father had called, urgent. Money troubles in the bank. A political fallout. Orders to end the dalliance, to prepare for her union with Tunde, a strategic match. Amaka had folded under pressure. She'd left Chika a note, cold, formal, and boarded a Lagos express train home, heart in pieces. Now, seated in the library, Amaka pressed trembling fingers to her lips, tasting regret. She retrieved her phone and scrolled through old messages. Chika's playful emojis turned to unanswered pleas, then silence. Her chest tightened, guilt and longing warred inside. A sudden light cough startled her. She looked up. A woman stood nearby, draped in flowing indigo robes, a stranger but not quite. The woman's eyes, sharp and kind, studied Amaka. Ereti Augun, she said softly, tipping her head. I knew your mother. She was spirited, like you. Amaka sat up, startled. I don't know you. Ereti smiled faintly. My grandmother spoke of her. She said, one day, my daughter will face the same choice I did, between duty and destiny. And she left a message for that day. She placed an envelope on the table. Open it tonight, before you wed. Ereti's gaze pierced Amaka's core. You cannot ignore this. Before Amaka could reply, the woman turned and drifted away as silently as she'd come, disappearing behind the shelves. Amaka sat frozen, the envelope trembling in her hand. She flipped it open. Inside, a note in elegant handwriting. Child, I once tried to flee my fate. I was nearly free, until fear and duty reclaimed me. Should you choose otherwise, remember, it may cost everything, but at least you'll live true to yourself. Your mother. Her breath caught. A chill ran down her spine. As distant drums from the wedding reception pulsed through the walls, Amaka pressed the letter to her heart. The world outside was spinning in celebration. Inside her, a new resolve began to stir. Amaka woke with a start, her heart pounding so fiercely she thought it might burst through her ribs. The pale glow of the bedside clock read 3:17 a.m. Darkness pressed in around her. The faint hum of air conditioning was punctuated by distant traffic horns and the nearly inaudible drip of a leaking faucet in the bathroom. She pressed trembling fingers to her temples. Headache, or was it something worse? In her dream, she had been standing on the hotel's penthouse balcony, dress billowing like a sail behind her. Below, Lagos stretched in neon veins and restless shadows. She'd looked over the ledge and, without warning, toppled forward. Time slowed, her veil fanning out like wings, then everything went black. Before she passed out, she'd seen a pale face bearing her mother's features, lips shaped in silent warning. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and patted across cool marble. Each footstep echoed in the sweet spacious silence. Drawing back the curtains, she looked down. The sprawling lights of Victoria Island below, the Lekki Uip Expressway snaking eastward, the Bonny Camp Lagoon glimmering like spilled mercury. Lagos at night seemed calm, but in her veins, a storm raged. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Kimi. Kimi, good morning, love. Breakfast in 30, they've set up your favorite Akara and Pap. See you? Amaka stared at the screen, thumb hovering. She typed, just need a minute. She left the suite and hurried down the silent hallway, lights dimmed to a reassuring glow. On the 10th floor, she paused by the fountain outside the hotel's coffee lounge. There, seated on a wrought iron bench, sat the woman in indigo robes, Ereti Augun, her silhouette illuminated by the blue glow of an overhead lamp. Ereti, Amaka breathed, her voice catching in her throat. How did you? Ereti lifted a calm hand. You needed answers, she said, her voice soft but unyielding. Your mother's warning was not idle. Amaka sank onto the bench. I dreamed I fell, and saw her face. Ereti nodded, as if this confirmed something long held. She tried once. Nearly succeeded. Then fear and duty dragged her back. She left a message for you, her only daughter, so you could choose differently. Amaka twisted the letter in her hands. But what do I choose? This wedding, this life, it's already set. Ereti's eyes glimmered. You still have today. You still have tomorrow. But you must decide before the sun finds you at the altar. She leaned close. Your destiny is yours, not your family's. Before Amaka could reply, Ereti stood. I'll see you again. And as silently as she'd appeared, she melted into the shadowed hallway. Amaka's resolve wavered between fear and defiance. She pressed a hand to her belly, where butterflies unsettled the air. The letter felt heavier than gold. Her phone buzzed again, a call from Tunde. She hesitated, then answered. Why didn't you pick up? Tunde's voice was tight. I couldn't sleep, she lied. You need to rest, he murmured. Big day tomorrow. I'm not sure about tomorrow, she whispered. A pause. We'll talk. I love you, Amaka. I love you too, she said, though she wasn't certain of the words anymore. She hung up, slid along the hallway back to her suite, and collapsed into a chair by the window. Through the glass, Lagos began to stir, neon seeds to dim streetlights, the first yellow streak of dawn glimmering on the horizon. Amaka closed her eyes, tears slipping free. The choice looming before her felt more terrifying than any dream. Morning arrived under a golden haze. By 7 a.m., the Oriental Hotel buzzed with hair and makeup teams, florists, caterers, and the low drone of generators powering lights for the bridal party photoshoot. Amaka, wrapped in a plush robe, watched from her suite's window as maids fluffed dresses and tuxedoed groomsmen rehearsed their bow ties. Her gaze slid to the antique crate by the door, the one marked in her mother's graceful script, for Amaka, to open when you need truth. She'd barely touched it since it arrived 2 days ago. Today, she would. She knelt before the crate, pressed her fingertips to the rough wood, and lifted the lid. Inside lay a velvet jewelry box, still bearing her mother's perfume faintly. A leather-bound diary, its edges worn and spine soft. A small brass key, its handle shaped like a heart. Her breath caught. She opened the velvet box. Inside, a gold locket engraved with her mother's initials. She held it up to the light, flipped it open, and found a folded slip of paper tucked beneath the portrait frame. Unfolding it. My dearest Amaka, if you read this, know I trusted you more than I trusted fate. Use the key, unlock the locket. It holds not only my love, but the means to your freedom. M. Beneath the note lay the locket's hinge, a hidden clasp. She pressed it, and the back swung open to reveal 3 tiny compartments, a scrap of paper, a single pearl, and a microfilm canister. Her pulse raced as she extracted each item. She read the scrap first. Meet Chicker at 12 p.m., the Ritz-Carlton lobby. Tell him flight. Then the pearl, smooth, lustrous, cold against her palm. And finally, the film canister stamped C. Augun, 1995-inch. What is this? She whispered. What did you plan, Mama? Her phone chirped again, this time 2 missed calls from Kimi and 1 from her father. She silenced it, pressing knobbed back into battery save. She had no time for lipstick today. Suddenly, The door opened. Kimi breezed in, cheerful. "Good morning, bride-to-be. They're waiting on you downstairs." She froze, eyes landing on the open crate. "Amaka?" Amaka tucked items back inside. "Kimi, I need to know something first. Why did my mother keep this from me? Why hasn't Dad mentioned any of this?" Kimi's lips pressed into a thin line. "Because it would unravel everything. I'm tired of everything. I need truth." Kimi looked torn, then gently closed the lid. "Be careful. Your father arranged this wedding not just for power, but to protect you, from scandal, from hardship. Your mother suffered in silence." Amaka shook her head. "I refuse to suffer too." She squared her shoulders. "I'm meeting someone." Kimi's eyes widened. "At the Ritz." "I'll call you." Amaka grabbed her purse and swept past. In the foyer, guests jostled for position. Reporters craned cameras. She wove through the crowd to the valet stand, where a black Mercedes idled. Inside, Chika sat, helmet perched on his lap. He'd surprised her by arriving on his motorcycle. His sharp eyes softened when he saw her. "Flight," she said, leaning through the open window. He nodded once. "Let's go." As they peeled away, the wedding band began its first note across the hotel speakers. Amaka felt the last ties to her perfect day unraveling, each chord a reminder that, at 12 p.m., she would choose her own path. And this time, she would not look back. Amaka and Chika drove through the morning traffic toward Lekki, weaving past yellow buses and glistening SUVs. The sun had climbed fully above the horizon, turning Lagos's tin roofs to hot plate metal. Amaka pressed the gold locket key between her fingers, feeling its sharp edges bite into her palm. Chika glanced over, concern etched in his dark eyes. "You sure about this?" he asked softly. Amaka nodded. "I need the facts. If I'm walking away tomorrow, I can't leave on lies." They turned onto the service road by the marina, and soon pulled up to Tunde's favorite cafe, an upscale spot with glass walls and white umbrellas shading wicker chairs. At a corner table sat Tunde Balagan, phone pressed to his ear, velvet suit jacket draped over the back of his chair. He looked every inch the polished politician's son. Perfect hairline, tailored lapels, crisp cologne drifting out onto the pavement. Chika parked and they approached, Amaka's heart hammering. As they neared, Tunde ended his call. "There you are," he said, standing quickly. He gestured to the empty seat opposite. "Please, sit." His smile was warm, but it did not reach his eyes. Amaka slid into the chair. Chika lingered by the railing, arms crossed. Amaka gave him a quick nod. "My family's been so impressed by you," Tunde said, folding his hands. "I'm glad you brought Chika along. It shows how much you care about your past." Amaka forced a polite smile. "I needed someone I can trust." She slid the opened envelope across the table, her mother's note. "I found this. Why did you hide it? Why did you hide her story from me?" Tunde's expression flickered, irritation barely concealed. He glanced at Chika, then back to Amaka. "I didn't hide anything. Your mother made her choices, she left that letter because she regretted it. I didn't want you to repeat the same mistake." Amaka's chest tightened. A mistake? She almost escaped an unhappy fate. She wanted freedom. Tunde leaned forward. "Freedom without security is a fool's errand. I'm offering you a life of comfort, influence, true power. Your mother gave that up, and she regretted it for the rest of her days." His voice softened. "Amaka, I love you. This is for your own good." Amaka glanced at Chika. He stood tensely, jaw clenched. Chika's eyes met hers, a silent warning, "Be careful." She returned to Tunde. "Love? You called me a pawn to merge wealth and power." Tunde's smile wavered. "Business and marriage, it's always been intertwined. You know that." She leaned back, adrenaline and anger roaring. "Tell me the truth, then. Why this rush? Why insist on tomorrow? Why does your father need this marriage now?" Tunde's shoulders sagged. He exhaled. "Look, I didn't want to drag you into family politics. But my father is facing a no-confidence motion in the Senate. His support base is fracturing. This marriage unites two dynasties, your family's corporate influence and ours political. It sends a message of unity." He met her gaze steadily. "It's not just our wedding. It's a vote of confidence in stability." Amaka's mind spun. Every congratulations text, every flashbulb, every press release had been part of a grander chess game. She swallowed hard. "And Ngozi?" She'd heard the name in his phone call. Who is she? A shadow crossed Tunde's face. An old friend. A campaign manager. Nothing more. Please don't make this harder than it already is. Amaka closed her eyes, fighting tears. She turned to Chika. You heard enough. Chika moved to her side, slipping into the empty chair. He reached for her hand and steeled himself. I'm sorry, Amaka. He used you for his family, used you to save his father's career. Tunde rose abruptly. That's enough. His voice was controlled anger. If you're not willing to stand by me, then maybe we shouldn't continue this. He stared at Amaka, hurt flashing in his eyes. You're free to go. Amaka felt the weight of that freedom settle on her shoulders, terrifying, exhilarating. She stood slowly, smoothing the front of her robe. Thank you, Tunde, for your honesty. She looked at Chika and nodded. They turned away, leaving Tunde alone with his empty chair and bitter regret. Outside, Chika slid into the passenger seat. Amaka's hands gripped the door frame. I never thought I'd be glad to lose a marriage, she whispered. Chika gave her a small, sad smile. Sometimes losing is winning. Back at Amaka's suite, the cacophony of pre-wedding bells and bustle had given way to hushed panic. Kimi burst in, eyes wide. Amaka, where have you been? The florist is here, the photographer, she broke off when she saw Amaka's resolute face. I'm not marrying him, Amaka said plainly, laying the locket and letter on the dresser. I'm leaving. Kimi's lips trembled. You can't just leave today. My dress, she touched her fitted lace gown. Your father will. My father has done enough, Amaka cut in softly. He buried my mother's truth, buried my own hopes. I'm done living someone else's story. But what about tomorrow's ceremony? The guests? The press? Kimi's voice cracked. They'll never let you walk away now. Amaka crossed to the window, looking down at the parked cars, the white tents that still stood silent on the terrace. That's why we have to move now. Before everyone wakes. She turned. Can you help me? Kimi's tears fell. She swallowed hard. Yes. Tell me what to do. Amaka grabbed her phone. First, pack only what you can carry. My passport, the locket, the diary, some clothes. No jewelry, no photos. Then call your brother, tell him I'm staying with you. He'll drive me to the airport. Kimi exhaled, nodding. Okay. Let's go. Amaka's mind raced. She needed a plane ticket, a new name on the boarding pass, and maybe the pearl from the locket to sell if she had to. She tore out a page from the diary, her mother's carefully scripted instructions, and skimmed its contents, contacts she'd never known, an attorney in Abuja, a safe house in Port Harcourt, a bank account in her mother's maiden name. In the half-packed suitcase on the bed, she dropped the diary and tucked it under her cashmere shawl. She unhooked the velvet box, retrieved the pearl and the microfilm canister, sliding them into a hidden pocket in her purse. Kimi reappeared in her eyeglass case. I booked a flight to Accra in 2 hours. It's the earliest I could get. Code name, Amora in J. She handed over the ticket. Amaka stared at the name, her second cousin's maiden name. Accra, okay. She took a shaky breath. Thank you. Kimi paused at the door. I'll tell them you were driven away by a stomach flu. That should keep them off our scent for a while. Good, Amaka said. Now, I need you to stay here until my father calls. Act worried, not suspicious. Kimi nodded fiercely. Anything, my friend. Alone, Amaka stared at her reflection in the mirror, white robe, streaked mascara, eyes rimmed red. She touched the locket at her throat, whispered to her mother, I won't fail you. Then she swept into the bathroom. She removed her heavy wedding makeup and hair extensions, wiping away every trace of the bride she'd been expected to be. Over her silk robe, she slipped into a simple black dress and flat sandals. She braided her hair into a low bun, tied a scarf over it, and repacked the robe and pearls back into the velvet box. At the door, she paused. Her gaze flicked to the front. 2 security guards chatted by the elevator, unaware. She made herself small, held the door handle gently, and slipped past them. In the lobby, the cafe terrace had emptied, waiters stacked chairs. The bridal party trailer, complete with white floral drapes, sat closed at the far end. Amaka headed for the rear entrance. The doorman towed his cap off. Good morning, Miss Nwosu. You're up early. Amaka offered a weak smile. Car broke down. I have to catch a flight. He peered at her. Anything I can do? Just, please call room service to pick up my breakfast. I'll be at the airport by 9. He nodded, doubtful, and gestured her on. Amaka clutched her purse, eyes forward, heart in her throat. Outside, the humid air pressed against her face. Her driver's engine idled at the curb. Chika slipped into the back seat, eyes bright with relief. She sank in beside him. "Thank you," she whispered. He pressed her hand. "You're free now." Their car merged into the stream of Lagos morning traffic. In the rearview mirror, Amaka glimpsed the hotel's facade, white columns and soaring windows. It felt like leaving behind more than a building. She left behind a lifetime of expectations. As they sped toward Murtala Muhammad International Airport, Amaka realized the real journey, the one her mother had tried to begin decades ago, was only beginning for her. With truth as her compass and love as her fuel, she was ready to chart her own course, wherever it might lead. Back in Lagos, the morning air hung heavy with both celebration and trepidation. Amaka, now back in her satin robe, slipped through the hotel's back corridors as if she belonged to their shadows. Kimi had orchestrated a diversion. The florist's cart overturned in the main foyer, petals strewn everywhere, sending the entire bridal party into a flurry. Cameras flashed, but the spectacle kept them distracted long enough. At precisely 9:45 a.m., Amaka slipped into the grand ballroom, where the final wedding rehearsal was already underway. Ivory drapes framed the raised platform, musicians tuned violins. Bridesmaids in coral lace practiced their procession. At the head of it all stood Chief Nwosu, regal in his agbada, surveying every detail. "Where is she?" he barked when Amaka failed to appear at the appointed time. The wedding planner, clutching a clipboard dripping with ribbons, stammered, She had a sudden headache, sir. Fresh juice, maybe?" Before Chief Nwosu could erupt, a nurse materialized at his side. "I'll check on her," she offered, ushering him away. The planner scurried to whisk Amaka behind a velvet curtain. Inside the curtained alcove stood Chika and Ereti. Ereti's indigo robe seemed almost luminous under the soft chandelier light. In her hand, she held a slender rope coiled like a serpent. "You have 5 minutes," Ereti murmured. "This goes around your waist, hidden under the gown. The net's set up below on the service balcony. When they call you forward, step back instead and jump." Amaka's pulse spiked. "Are you certain?" Ereti's gaze was steady. "You'll land safely. Then Chika's waiting downstairs. You'll slip into civilian clothes hidden in the green tote." She tapped the bag. "And you'll be free." Chika folded Amaka into a quick embrace. "I'll meet you at the airport in 30 minutes. Then we're gone, forever." Amaka's breath hitched. She placed her hand on Ereti's arm. "Thank you, for believing in me." Ereti nodded once, then slipped away, leaving Amaka and Chika alone. Amaka closed her eyes, picturing her mother's ghostly warning. Now it was time to write her own ending. When the rehearsal cue sounded, Amaka emerged from behind the curtain in full bridal regalia. Guests in the balcony chattered about her absence, photographers repositioned their lenses. Chief Nwosu frowned but waved her forward. The string quartet launched into a gentle prelude. One by one, bridesmaids descended the aisle. Amaka moved last, her gown swirling like a white storm. She paused at the top of the steps, heart pounding in her ears. Chief Nwosu stood to her right, Tunde to her left, looking every bit the adoring fiancé. "Shall we walk through the vows?" the priest called from the dais. Amaka nodded, but as Tunde reached for her hand, she shook her head and stepped backward. A collective gasp rippled through the room. "My mother's locket," Amaka said, voice strong despite racing pulse. She unclasped the velvet necklace, slipped it to an aide, and flicked her wrist. The hidden carabiner clinked as it detached from the rope around her waist. Without waiting for questions, she took a deliberate step backward, straight into the open archway. For an instant, time fractured. Guests froze mid-gasp. Tunde's face drained pale. A flower girl shrieked. Chief Nwosu lunged forward. Then Amaka leapt. She sailed through the air, veil trailing like a comet's tail. Below, a coarse net, rigged by Ereti's allies, caught her momentum, swallowing the impact. She landed crouched, breathless but unhurt. A moment later, Chika sprinted out from the service corridor, whisking her into the waiting tote, a simple shift from satin to cotton, from bridal tiara to baseball cap. By the time Chief Nwosu and hotel security reached the service level, Amaka and Chika's footsteps had faded. Behind them, the net sagged under the weight of the dresser's train, and a single pearl rolled free, glinting on the concrete floor. At noon, Lagos awoke to pandemonium. Headlines splashed across online sites and broadsheets alike. Bride jumps from penthouse suite on wedding day. The front page of the Lagos Times ran a blurry photo of a tattered veil drifting over the service balcony, nestled above the grim net. Social media exploded with theories: suicide, accident, even murder. In the Nwosu mansion on Victoria Island, Chief Nwosu sat stone-faced in his study as aides fluttered around him. His phone buzzed, calls from party dignitaries, security chiefs, press secretaries. He swiped them all to voicemail. "Bring me the CCTV," he growled to his chief of staff. And established contact with the police. Elsewhere, Tunde Balogun raged in his apartment on Ikoyi, fists pounding the tabletop. His campaign manager, Ngozi, placed a calming hand on his arm. "You should go home," she said quietly. "They need you with your family." Tunde snarled. "I'm the groom." He pressed his forehead against the marble. "Where is she?" At the Oriental Hotel, reporters huddled by the barricaded service entrance. Police yellow tape fluttered in the humid breeze. A detective gingerly lifted the net's corner, revealing a fragment of lace. He frowned, lifted it to his nose, still faintly scented of jasmine. Back at the airport, Amaka and Chika watched the chaos unfold on a battered tablet as their flight taxied. Amaka's hand trembled over her cup of water. "They think I died," she whispered. Chika squeezed her shoulder. "Let them think what they will. You're alive, free." Amaka swallowed. "But what about them? My father. Tunde. Ngozi. They'll hunt me down." Chika exhaled. "We'll disappear. We have the Locket's microfilm, evidence of your mother's story and your own. We can start over, build a new life. Maybe in Europe, maybe in Canada." Amaka turned to him, tears shining with relief. "Thank you, Chika, for saving me." Outside, Lagos news choppers roared overhead, shrinking into dots above the lagoon. The plane lifted, carrying Amaka toward the sunrise. 3 days after Amaka's dramatic escape, Lagos was still reeling. News crews camped outside the Oriental Hotel, their satellite vans lining Alfred Ruane Road like a procession of vultures. The police, under intense public pressure, finally released a statement confirming the incident, but stopping short of declaring it a suicide attempt. Detective Inspector Femi Adebayo stood before a bank of CCTV monitors in the hotel security office. He rewound footage to the moment Amaka stepped backward off the terrace. The net caught her mid-fall, then the scene went black as staff swarmed the service corridor. Frame by frame, Femi muttered, tapping the pause button. On the next screen, an aide dashed out, draped in a coral dress, retrieving the net's carabiner. He noted the aide's face. "Get her in," he ordered. "She's a witness." In the adjacent room, Chief Nwosu sat across from 2 uniformed officers, rage and despair warring on his face. "She could have died," he spat. "My daughter is missing, and you're treating it like a trivial stunt." The lead officer cleared his throat. "Sir, we're following every lead. There are questions about foul play, someone may have coerced her. We've interviewed Mr. Balogun, he claims no involvement. We're also looking into the origin of that net." Chief Nwosu slammed a fist on the table. "Find her. Bring her home, alive." Meanwhile, Tunde Balogun was holed up in his Ikoyi apartment, phone glued to his ear. His campaign manager, Ngozi, paced in the living room. "Calm down," she urged. "The governor's office is spinning this as an attempted kidnapping. They're saying criminals targeted the bride for ransom." Tunde ran a hand through his hair. "That's absurd. She's not some naive tourist." Ngozi tapped her tablet. "Public sentiment is on her side. They call her a hero. We need to pivot, express concern, but don't accuse the hotel. Let the police work." Tunde exhaled slowly. "And if she never comes back?" Ngozi met his eyes. "We'll manage expectations. If it looks like she chose this, well, then it's her choice." Late that afternoon, Femi tracked down Areti Augun, now staying in a nearby guest house. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, believing she was a spiritualist. TV cameras focused on her door. Areti opened the door calmly. A reporter thrust a microphone forward. "Madam Augun, did you see Mrs. Nwosu's ghost before the jump?" Areti's expression was serene. "My vision was clear, a young woman torn between duty and selfhood. I offered guidance, nothing more." She paused. "Whether she flies or falls is her decision." Femi stepped forward, flashing his badge. "Madam Augun, I'm Detective Adebayo. I need to ask you some questions." Inside, Areti invited him to sit. Her robes shimmered in the lamplight. Behind her, a small oil painting of Amaka's mother hung on the wall. Femi cleared his throat. You claim to have arranged the net, he asked bluntly. Ereti folded her hands. I arranged nothing. I provided counsel. The net was my sister's, we shared it years ago when we nearly lost someone dear. She offered a file. Here are names of those who set it up, volunteers who believed in Amaka's right to choose. Femi paged through the documents, hotel contractors, a retired show jumper, even one of Chika's art patrons. Each affidavit swore no malice, only a wish to protect. He frowned. This isn't normal police work. Ereti rose. Sometimes justice requires extraordinary measures. You'll find no evidence of foul play, only a young woman's cry for freedom. She closed the file. Now, will you help her, or lock her away? His gaze dropped. I'll do my duty. Meanwhile, Chika and Amaka were gathering papers in a rented flat in Accra. The microfilm canister, labeled C. Augun, 1995-inch, had been sent to a contact in London who promised to develop its contents. They needed more than memories, they needed proof. At 8 p.m., Amaka answered a soft knock at the door. A slim man in a grey suit introduced himself as Private Investigator Olumide Bello. Ms. Nwosu? Mr. Ease? I understand you requested a discreet inquiry into possible coercion. Amaka motioned him inside. Yes. I want to know if anyone forced me to jump. Olumide laid a photo on the table, security footage of a hotel aide slipping the carabiner onto Amaka's waist. He says he thought it was part of the wedding decor, some elaborate rope display, until he realized, he trailed off. I suspect someone rigged the rehearsal. Chika's jaw clenched. Who would do that? Olumide tapped another document, a bank statement showing a large withdrawal from Tunde's account 2 days before the wedding. You said you overheard a call mentioning Ngozi. This suggests funding for the stunt. Amaka covered her mouth. He financed my escape. It appears so, Olumide said. He needed a sensational story, shifting blame onto the hotel, stirring public sympathy. He leaned forward. If we release this, the tables turn completely. Amaka sat back, mind racing. But I already fled. I don't want to destroy him, I want to reclaim my life. Olumide nodded. Then tell your story. Publish the microfilm's contents once it's developed. Let truth be your legacy, not gossip. Amaka exhaled, resolve kindling anew. Thank you. That's what I'll do. 1 year later, the sun dipped low behind Lekki's palm trees, casting long shadows across the gallery courtyard. A crowd gathered around a gleaming marble plinth, its bronze plaque read, "The Bride in Flight." An homage to Amaka Nwosu. Inside, Chika guided Amaka through the exhibition. The main hall centerpiece was a life-sized sculpture of a bride mid-leap, veil and gown abstracted into wind-blown ribbons of steel. Around it, 12 easels displayed mixed-media portraits, Chika's watercolors of Amaka's childhood home, her mother's diary pages enlarged as art prints, and conceptual pieces inspired by her escape. A Nigerian-born historian, Dr. Amina Salizu, stepped to the podium. As twilight settled, she addressed the attendees, artists, activists, journalists, and young women in bright anchor dresses. Today, we honor more than a woman who jumped from a balcony, Dr. Salizu began, voice resonant. We celebrate a soul brave enough to choose herself over convention. The Bride in Flight is a symbol that our stories need not end at the altar of expectation. Applause rippled through the hall. Amaka squeezed Chika's hand. He smiled, pride shining in his eyes. A journalist approached, notebook poised. Ms. Nwosu, do you regret any of this? Amaka glanced at her mother's locket, a small, gold heart tucked into her pocket. Every day was terrifying, she said softly. But I'd rather live afraid than die pretending. Outside, Ereti Augun watched from the gallery entrance, her indigo robes traded for a simple waxprint dress. She approached Amaka and pressed a folded sheet into her hand. It's from your mother, Ereti whispered. A final letter. Tears blurred Amaka's vision as she read. My dearest Amaka. You soared higher than I ever dared. The world will know your name, and through you, mine. Live boldly, love openly, and never relinquish your truth. With boundless pride. Mama. Amaka folded the letter and tucked it beside her locket. As guests lingered over wine and hors d'oeuvre, she stood tall before her sculpture, a once ill-fated bride who had taken flight, and inspired a generation to follow. The night sky over Lekki twinkled with promise. Among the sculptures and portraits, Amaka's silhouette merged with the artwork, a living testament that sometimes, the greatest love story is the one you write for yourself. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment your thoughts and share. See you in the next story. AFRITALES by Moonlight.